I asked the participants to, on one side of the cue card, write down an incident in which you were the culprit in a situation. And the other side, when you were the victim. And then I asked the group, okay, who wants to share when you were the victim? Everybody's hand goes up inevitably. Okay, now who wants to share when you're the culprit?
Yeah.
You will not, literally, it's difficult for people to actually raise their hands and admit they've done something wrong. And that's where I chime in and say, you know what, this is what I did incorrectly. This is where I went wrong.
Welcome to the Unstoppables. This is the place, the home of the Wooditch Network, the place where we take those intentions you have and turn them into dollars by showing you, by revealing the way, by bringing today's stars, today's top entrepreneurs, today's top thinkers, and asking them the question, what is it that made you unstoppable? Today, the unstoppable person on this show, and it is my special guest, Dr. Dionne Poulton, an educator in diversity and inclusion. She's a conflict mediator with 20 years of experience, specializing in youth and adult education. She went to the University of Georgia. We will not hold that Bulldogs loss to Alabama against her. Dr. Poulton, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Bill. Thanks for having me. Great to be with you.
The first thing we talked about before, we did a little preamp for about 5 minutes, and there's a really cool, if you can see behind Dr. Poulton, there's a really cool hippo back there.
Yay!
I love that.
I love hippos.
You know, if you get me off on that form of ADD I have, so we're just going to keep going down the road. Tell me, with that awkward segue, give me a little bit about your background from 30,000 feet, and tell me how you got started in this very, very worthwhile career.
Well, I'm originally from Toronto, Canada, and I actually went down to Houston, Texas for my undergrad degree, where I got a full scholarship to run track and field. Came back to Toronto, did my teaching degree at University of Toronto, and then I started my teaching career at an quote-unquote inner city school in Toronto. So I actually started off as a health and PE teacher. And what happened was I had an incident with an enlightening moment, I should say, with a colleague. So I had previous experience working with kids in difficult shelters and so on. So the principal asked me to take over a class of grade 9 boys, 35 grade 9 boys, who had been through 3 other teachers prior to my arrival. And she says, Dionne, can you take over the class for me? They're having a difficult time. I said, that's fine, I'll do it. So in the meeting with the teacher, the third teacher, before I took over the class, she described the kids as being animals and they're this and they're that. And so I said, okay, that's fine. Met with the kids and I said to them, okay, first day I said, okay, you had a bit difficult time before my arrival. You're gonna come to class on time, pull up your pants, do your homework, show me respect, we're gonna have a good time. And they all did really well at the end of the semester, to the point where I won Rookie of the Year at the high school. After the ceremony, the teacher whose class I inherited, the last teacher, came to me and said, oh, you know, Dionne, you only did well with those kids because you're Black and because you're pretty. I said, I must be really pretty. I said, how do you explain the fact that the white kids did well, the Asian kids, Hispanic kids? I said, I must be really, really gorgeous. So just kind of made that joke with her. But it wasn't a confrontation, but it really, really opened my eyes to biases that people have and how she basically deduced my fantastic teaching ability, I would say, to just my race and my gender. And the irony here is that she actually had a disability and she walked with a limp and always complained that people were prejudging her based upon how she looked. And so I said to my colleague at the time, I said, oh, so you do realize what you did to me is exactly what you've been complaining of, which is you've been basically you just looked at me and decided how I look is how I should be treated. And so it was a very pivotal moment for me in my career. And that kind of opened my eyes to this idea of bias and teacher dynamics and students. And so that's why I was led to that research.
You know, we have there's a statue in my office and it's Atlas, but I call it the myth of Sisyphus. And it's a guy who rolls the ball up the hill. He never quite gets to the top and it rolls back down. Mm-hmm. That is me trying to expand the box here of awareness in people. And that preconceived prejudice that usually follows in thought and action, meaning when they said to you, oh, those kids are animals. You know, some people would take that as a self-fulfilling prophecy, treat them as such, and never open any windows or doors in life, theirs or
That's
ours.
right. That's right.
To do that, to me, speaks volumes to you. So you have me hooked now. You had me intrigued with the hippo. Now, because for us to expand that box, it takes a lot of work. And we're always going to be pushing that ball up the hill. We hopefully get a few that can push with us. So I really appreciate what you're saying with that. What is your biggest challenge in opening people's minds, which is a challenge in and of itself, in working toward inclusion?
So to your point, and this ties into your question, that I don't think people recognize how powerful their thoughts are and how much you can create your own experiences. So if you think something, there's something called confirmation bias. So if I believe that all, people with burgundy hair are dangerous, then I'm going to look for those kind of opportunities to support what I'm thinking. And that's what they call confirmation bias. So to answer your question, the difficult thing that I've experienced is that people are kind of tied to their thinking and their beliefs. And especially if you grew up in a particular type of home where you didn't have any kind of exposure, or you were outrightly taught that this type of people are not good for you, then then you have like what they call an internal struggle, because you go into the workforce and then you encounter those very people, and then what do you do with what you've learned? And especially since when you've been taught that at your home, and those from your parents or your guardian, if they taught you that information, then sometimes questioning what you've been taught is also questioning the stability of your household and reflecting on your household, and almost like a betrayal. So that's a difficulty that I experience. Trying to create inclusion, let people actually kind of reconsider their thoughts. But I do it gently.
That's a great point, because you're shaking the very foundation of their belief system, and it starts in the home. No,
absolutely.
Values. That's great. But tell me what you do.
Well, there's primary socialization, there's secondary socialization. So primary is in the home, it's your parent, it's your guardian, and so on. And then secondary is what I just mentioned. It's the workplace, or going on a vacation, doing some kind of immersive activity where you literally go into an environment that kind of counteracts what you've been taught in your primary socialization time. And that gives you opportunities of exposure that can help you kind of shift your opinion and your experience, or your knowledge of people and your acceptance of people.
There's a lot of them. There are a few of us. What keeps the light burning inside of you to keep taking that challenge, even in the face of not defeats, but some people who just aren't going to get it? There's an overwhelming amount that just don't want to get it, wanting the same thing probably. So how do you keep that light burning to say, you know what, it's the next heart, it's the next mind? What's inside you that makes you do that?
You know what, Bill, I have been doing this for 20 years, and I've encountered all types of people. I will share an example of doing a training in South Carolina with a woman who started off like this. Her hands were just kind of folded. She was just not open. She was not listening. She was not receptive. And over time, throughout the workshop, I can literally see her face change. She was kind of nodding in agreement at times, and I can tell that she was just, there was a shift in her. And at the end, she actually came to me and shared a story, actually a dilemma she had, because she realized that the person she married, who was a skinhead and was very racist, he was no longer the perfect fit for her, because she had experience now working with kids in inner city schools of kids of color. And so she had a dilemma that she literally shared was, should she send her children to her husband's mother, who taught her husband to hate? And so she found that when she sent her grandchildren, so when she sent her children to the grandmother's house, they would come back with all these really colorful language and so on. So she says, what do you think about that situation? And so she literally had to reconsider her marriage, everything, because she, again, the secondary socialization, she had been exposed and realized, you know what I was thinking is not correct, because I've now discovered exceptions to what I've been taught and what I think I know.
I'm going to drop back into something, because sure, when I meet people from Canada, I really want validation. So I want you to say A-B-O-U-T. Let me hear the inflection on that word.
Oh, I get this all the time. About.
You really are from Canada, aren't you? A friend of mine is going to ask me this, because he watches the show. Track coach at North Carolina State. It's women's track.
Cool.
So he's going to want to know what you ran, and maybe you can get you out of retirement and run something again. So he's going to. What did you run? What did you run?
I ran the 100 meters and the 200, which I hated. And I ran the 4x1 relay. So I competed for Canada. I was on the junior national team and the national team. And I have a bit of a sore spot, because I would say the first time that I ran for the Olympic trials, I think I was robbed. So I'm going to just put it out there. So this, you have those difficult moments you get over. But it was very, very gratifying. I did it for basically half my life until I went to undergrad and got a full ride to Rice University in Houston. So it really served its purpose, and so I enjoyed it. Traveled the world a bit, met lots of people, still have a lot of really amazing track friends. Actually went to my friend's 50th birthday party, Donovan Bailey, who won the 96 Olympics, 100 meters. So there's a core group of us that still keeps in contact, and we have great time. So just the relationships that we've been able to sustain over time, it's been invaluable.
Dionne, I have the substance on the show that wants to ask you a question. I think she spoke with you previously. Kelsey, I have a question for you.
No, I'm just going to be the mouthpiece for Bill's Instagram live followers. We have an Instagram live follower that brought up a great point. It's not just the home too. He's saying that the media plays a big role in everything that you guys were discussing earlier. So I was wondering if you could talk about that. And then also he wants to know if you have an Instagram account.
I do have an Instagram account, and I will say shamefully that is my 14-year-old that actually forced me to put it together. I'm at Dr. Dionne, at Dionne Poulton, which is where you can find an Instagram. So I need to get on that, the social media, that part of social media. But I'm on LinkedIn as well and Facebook. So to answer your question, absolutely, the media plays a huge role in shaping our perceptions of people and ourselves. And so that would be categorized as the secondary kind of socialization and our exposure. So I would agree, definitely. And if we're not cognizant of the messages that are being sent to us in the media, then definitely that can translate to some horror stories. Like, for example, that H&M, we all saw the H&M ad.
Yeah.
And so that I thought was despicable, honestly. As a Black woman with a mother of 2 children, I do not believe that was just by chance. Mm-hmm. Why did they choose a dark-skinned child as opposed to a light-skinned Black child? Why did you pick a Black child to begin with? So there are little. So we have to remember in the media, to your point, Kelsey, is that there are people behind these messages. We have to remember that they're not just in the ether, in the atmosphere. There are literally people behind the cameras, behind behind these ads, and they are using their biases to inform their decisions in terms of advertising. So that's why it is important to have people in the room, but most importantly, not just have people in the room, but do they have power? Because I've seen instances where people have had the title, and they're just figureheads, and they're just there just for the show, and they have their word means nothing. So it's not just being in the room, but it's like, okay, what is your structure, and who gets hurt and who does not get hurt? So,
I'm a big fan of Vip Jaswell. He's on Fox Business International, who I think is very, very fair and unbiased, and really the way he shapes and what he's shaping and how he gives his guests the chance to come on and give their point and really shape it. He was probably the toughest interviewer I ever had, because he had those long, pregnant pauses of silence where you just say, and then you run into the trap. So Vip, thanks for tuning in. I remember the lessons well. It's not always racist, but sometimes it is. What does that mean? And could you talk about why it's so important for leaders in the workplace, not just the people on the street?
Because we are all fallible. We all prejudge. We all can make mistakes. Back to the media, we're all shaped by the images that are sent to us. We're all raised in the society where some people are regarded as more intelligent. Some people are regarded as more worthy. That's just beauty. So we say sometimes beautiful people get more opportunities than people who are not beautiful. So that's, there's research to support that. So in terms of race, I wrote the book because there's literally confusion, and still exists today, as to what exactly is racist and what is not. So to back to what I said, so we can prejudge on the basis of anything, whether it's race, class, gender, age, beauty, height, and so on. But when it goes a step further, so the definition of a racist is somebody who believes in the superiority of one race over another. That's the definition of a racist. And someone who practices racism, what they do is they put those prejudices in action. So they actually, they have a prejudgment, and as a result of that, they then try to stop somebody, whether it's socially, economically, they do whatever they can to keep that person down based upon how they look. So there's a definite distinction between those the terminology. And I find that, because of that confusion, if you cannot define what something is, how do you actually solve it? And so that's why I wrote the book.
True. Where do we find the book?
It can be found on Amazon.com. It's in different online stores.
It's Not Always Racist, but Sometimes It is the name of the book. You can find this on Amazon.
Thank you. Yes.
Where else can we find you?
I have a LinkedIn account, so at Dr. Dionne Poulton on LinkedIn. I'm also on Facebook at Dr. Dionne. The Dr. Dionne. I actually have a podcast as well. So the Dr. Dionne Show podcast, and I mentioned Instagram that I need to work on a little more, and Facebook. So all.
Works on my Instagram is Kelsey. So
what was that? Sorry.
Kelsey works on my Instagram. You got it. Kelsey is the one that works on my Instagram.
Oh, does she? See, you're lucky.
I am. She takes care. But here's the thing: if you're going to make that deal, that Faustian bargain. She's going to post up there. It might not be the best profile of me. I'm
sure every angle of you is perfect.
Oh, no. Flattery is going to get you to come back here. Okay, we're going to invite you. There are probably myriad things that contribute to this. But what would you say is the one thing that truly makes you unstoppable?
I have a go-getter mentality, and it sounds very kind of cliche, but if I have an idea, if I want to do something, I pursue it and I do it until I just achieve it. And I don't let fear kind of dictate what my decisions are, because I really think that sometimes you can achieve. Sorry, let me rewind. If you have an idea or you have something you want to accomplish, the achievement is actually in doing it, not necessarily the outcome. Sometimes you do something, you don't get the outcome you want, but I think it's important to follow through, because so many people can sit back and say, like, for example, my book, oh, you're writing a book, that's risky. How am I going to sell? What if you don't sell a lot? But you know what? I put it together. I sat down and I wrote it, and I got it published. And so that's an accomplishment for me. So whatever happened after that was gravy. And I find that what makes me unstoppable is not listening to the naysayers. And then you will find the naysayers all the time, because people not necessarily have good intentions for you, or maybe they'll be jealous or whatever, and they want to kind of keep you back. But I literally just, like, you tell me I can't do something, for example, my PhD, I was told, oh, you're mom of two little girls. How are you going to do? How are you managing? You know what? I'm managing. I got it done. So it's a matter of just sticking to your gut and your ideals and saying, you know what, I'm going to go for it regardless. And that's what I've been doing. And that's what's made me where I am.
I have a comment, and then I have a question for you.
Sure.
I think, Dionne, there's three types of people: the malicious, the ill-informed, right, and the well-intended. And when they give us these opinions and their opinion, even the well-intended, we've got to find our own voice. We've got to find that, because there are people who would misguide us by intent. There are people who would like to see us live that schadenfreude of getting a pleasure from our misfortune. But there are those people who have our best interests in mind. But we have to be able to hear that voice and follow that voice, like you did, going the next. Because I think you've been able to define everything in life, and I think you define success a certain way, and I think you define failure a certain way. So tell me how you define success.
I think success is going after what you want and achieving it, setting a goal and achieving it. And I think it's just as simple as that. Actually, I was at a Chinese food restaurant last night, and the what's it called? The fortune cookie. It said something like, those who don't fail are those who don't try. And it was just like so ironic, and but it's so true. And I tell my children that. I said, if you can try something and, oh, they're going to laugh. I don't care. Let them laugh. You know what? They're sitting from the sidelines laughing. Yes. You're on the court. You're trying.
You're a participant. Get in the game. Sorry? Get in the game. You're a participant, right?
There you go. There you go. That's how you win. That's how you win.
Okay, Dionne, the other side of the coin. So you get out there, sometimes you're going to fail. So what is your biggest failure to date in life? Biggest failure?
I'm going to throw it back to you for a second. How do you define failure?
Well, to me, I have the toughest time with that because I'm writing a book on it, failing. And when we were crafting the title in New York, I thought, I don't know. I just thought it's part of the bargain of going forward. I just thought it was a setback. I just think failure is something that Churchill said was not, fatal, and success, it's not final, and or fatal, and success is not final. It's always a process. So I really looked at failure as going out, doing the very best I can. And if I fell short, well, there was someone that was better than me on the field of play. There was someone who outfought me. And you have to be able to take your hat and tip it and say, I've learned from that. So if you're learning in that process of setback, I guess we can call it failure. But
and then I identify and agree with what you're saying. So I maybe it's a euphemism in saying that you fall short or whatever. Maybe it depends on who you ask. But I really think I've had major disappointments. Absolutely. I failed to make the Olympic team. But whatever, it's another cliche, whatever hurt you, whatever happens, make you stronger. And I really think that if you just take those experiences as lessons, and I also believe too, that sometimes things don't work out for you because there's something better for you out there. And that's happened several times in my life where, you put all your eggs in this basket, you say, I really want this, and then it falls through. And then a week later, something amazing happens. And you say, oh, now I know why that didn't come to fruition. It wasn't right for me. Maybe it wasn't the right timing. So I'm not religious at all, but I'm very spiritual, and I really believe that things happen for a reason. And I really pay attention to cues, and I pay attention to things that happen. And how many times in my life where I've been disappointed and I literally get the message the next day or a week later saying, you know what, that's why that didn't happen.
I think we share the optimist gene. We share the optimist. I think I love the Nietzsche, that which does not kill us will only make us stronger. He's tested me a few times. The toughest question that I would ask you then when I talk about failure, we're in good company because many of the guests have a very difficult time. What is failure? And that I think is part of that success DNA where we're just thinking it's part of the deal. It's part of getting knocked down and getting back up. What is it? Getting knocked down 7 times and getting up 8? It's hard for people to come to that. This one as well. And if you could give me one, you probably give me 3 or 4. But what is your defining moment? What is your defining moment?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. I would say the loss of my parents was a defining moment for me. It really, when you lose people you love, especially your parents and so close to you, it really puts things into perspective. It really makes you reevaluate who you are, who's around you, who you allow around you, and in the direction you're going in. So that was really a pivotal moment for me once I came through the fire, literally. That really is what's helped me kind of stay my course and just stay away from things that are just not good for me. And I really that knows about being able to smell when something's not right. I adhere to that, and that's really a defining moment in my life for sure.
Great answer. I call it the peanut gallery, but it's much more than that. Kelsey has another question for you.
I do. I'm sorry. I'm really enjoying this, and I kind of wanted to go back to a story that you were talking about in the beginning with this being a school teacher and running that classroom. And you had mentioned that your colleague had attributed the outcome of your participation to your race and your gender. And because you're the head of a consulting group and you go to different companies and you speak on diversity and inclusion and these unconscious biases that we have, I was wondering, what does it look like when you you know, that lesson that you learned early on in your career, how does that influence you going into these other companies? What do you say to them? And how do you really fix these unconscious biases that either the leaders have or the employees have? What does that look like?
Well, thanks for your question. So one thing I do, because I start off by saying that we all have biases, which means that so do I. I'm trained in diversity. I'm a person of color. I'm a woman. So of course I should not have any problems with biases. But you know what? I do. And so what I do is when I come into any kind of workplace environment, I actually share a situation where I was the culprit. So I always do an activity called culprit bias and quote unquote victim bias. So I ask the participants to, on one side of the cue card, write down an incident in which you were the culprit in a situation. And the other side, when you were the victim. And then I ask the group, okay, who wants to share when you were the victim? Everybody's hand goes up inevitably. Okay, now who wants to share when you're the culprit?
Yeah.
You will not, literally, it's difficult for people to actually raise their hands and admit they've done something wrong. And that's where I chime in and say, you know what, this is what I did incorrectly. This is where I went wrong. And if I'm trained in this area and I've experienced bias, then clearly that there's literature also to support this, then clearly there's some validity to what I'm saying. And then the minute that I able to share my deficits, then other people are then feel comfortable sharing what theirs are, because it's there's shared experiences, and it's not gotcha. It's not, you know, you're wrong, you're this. It's a very, very safe environment where people can actually share. Because if you can't share safely, then no one can learn, and it's not going to be productive.
You know, we're limited by our experiences or by our imagination, which sometimes follows the experience. Mm-hmm. You are traveling the country, so you're more exposed to this. And even at 60,000 feet, how is this country doing with inclusion? How are we doing overall? What's our grade?
You know, it's been interesting, because I literally thought we were going in one direction and we're kind of going in another direction. And I can tell there's like a social fight going on in terms of, you know, what is appropriate to say, what's not appropriate to say, who is valued, who's not valued. I really think, in just speaking with individual people, I think we are going the right direction. It may be difficult right now to believe that, but I think it's inevitable. I just think that the world is more, alert to issues. We're becoming more inclusive just naturally. I look at my nieces and nephews. They're in their 20s. They're millennials, and they're like the United Nations. They're friendships, and I see my children, and they're 14, 11, and they their friends are very diverse as well, which is I intentionally raise them that way, to believe that way, because that's how I was raised. But I really think that over time, people are recognizing, you know what? We're all just human. We are going to the same place.
Yes.
When this, whatever happens, when we pass on, we go to the same place.
Yes.
So why not respect each other now while we're here?
Kelsey's clapping for you back there.
Thank you, Kelsey.
I'd hug you if you didn't sue me, but I would come up.
I love hugs.
This is to your point on family, and I'm gonna make this point because it's what I've experienced. We grew up in a really small town in Western Pennsylvania. And there were no people of color. So we didn't grow up with a prejudice. And we didn't grow up with it just was people were people, and it was no bias. It was, everybody was equal. And some of my best friends are people of color because I just see people as people. And that's been one of, I think, the greatest gifts I've been able I was bestowed. And so I was able to really grow that way and look at all people as being equal. So
that's awesome.
It's a gift that my parents gave me, I guess, and it's part of vocation. And you talked about family. Let's go into family and round this up. For your children, if you could give them something, you would say that this is what they learned from me and they've taken into the world, and the world's going to be a better place because I've taught them this. What would that thing be?
I've taught my children two major things. One is to love yourself and not to let anybody bring you down, cut you down. You are great, you're awesome, you're fabulous. And anybody who comes in your circle who does not kind of affirm that, we always say, so if someone comes in your circle and they don't treat you the way I treat you or your dad treats you, they're not right for you, and keep them out. Whether it's a male, I talk about relationship, they're 14, 11, but I say, okay, you don't stay from men that do that to you. I said, you go by how your dad makes you feel as a young girl, and he loves you. So you use that as your barometer. So that's one thing that I've taught them, that I know that they're really listening to. The second thing is just, again, it's respect for diversity. From early on, it's kind of a mistake. People don't realize, oh, if I don't talk about it, then it's not going to happen, or they don't realize. Kids as early as 5 years old recognize that they're different, who their race is or whatever. And sometimes the kids get a little older and they attach value to those particular types of races. So it's important to be open and just say, hey, you know what? This is what's going on. And sorry, the third thing I've had to teach them too, unfortunately, is that adults are not always right.
Yeah.
Because there are times where, that they've been in situations with adults and they've been mistreated. And I'm not saying just by white folks. I'm saying black, white, different people. And sometimes in your gut, if you feel like something is wrong, and if they're an adult, it doesn't mean that you have to just basically excuse what you think.
Yes.
And adults are not, age does not necessarily mean wisdom. There's not direct correlation between the two, I've realized. So.
You're blowing up the hearts on my Instagram. So
oh, really? Oh, awesome.
You're also blowing up mine. I'm really feel like I'm attached to you already here.
I'm excited to be with you.
I'm going to give you a last takeaway. You want to say anything to the audience as a last takeaway before we close?
I think we should just continue on the course. If you're following Bill Wooditch, that means that you are a certain type of person in terms of what you value and your thinking. And I think we should stay that course. Lead with love, lead with respect, and we're gonna be fine. We are fine. Lead with love, lead with respect. You have mine, you have my love, you have my respect. You've been fantastic. Still love those hippos. It's kind of taking my attention away back. Thanks, Bill. Dionne Poulton, thank you very much. You were awesome on the Unstoppables. I appreciate that. Thanks for your time. Thanks for having me.